I planned my wife's perfect birthday surprise. String quartet, slideshow, everything. The night before, I found her phone unlocked. 5 years of lies. So I vanished. She woke up to an empty house and a canceled party. But here's the twist. I threw it anyway. Just not for her. My name is Daniel Grayson. I'm 42 years old, and until 3 weeks ago, I thought I had a pretty good life. I work as Director of Communications at Riverside Community College in Portland, Oregon. Stable job, decent salary, nice house in the suburbs. My wife Daphne and I have been married for 8 years. She brought her daughter Skylar into the relationship when the girl was 6. I never saw Skylar as a stepdaughter. She was just my kid. Daphne worked as a project coordinator at Henderson Associates, a mid-sized architecture firm downtown. That's where she met Kyle Dawson, the senior project manager. That's where everything fell apart. It happened on a Tuesday night, October 17th, to be exact. I remember because I've been planning Daphne's 38th birthday party for weeks. I had the venue booked, the catering ordered, even hired a string quartet because she loved classical music. The invitations were already printed. I put together a slideshow with photos from our whole relationship, every vacation, every holiday, every stupid selfie we'd ever taken. I was sitting in my home office going over the final guest list when I heard her phone buzz on the kitchen counter. She was upstairs taking a bath. The lavender scent drifted down the hallway, mixing with the smell of the chicken I'd made for dinner. Everything felt normal, peaceful even. Her phone buzzed again, then again. I walked into the kitchen thinking it might be her sister Amber or her mom Julia. Maybe something important. When I picked up the phone, the screen was already unlocked. She must have forgotten to set it to auto-lock again. The messages were right there. A thread labeled work, Kyle D. Except they weren't talking about work. Can't wait for Friday. Same hotel. Room 412 again. They know us there now, LOL. Bring that red thing you wore last time. And then, the one that made my blood run cold. 5 years, and he still doesn't suspect a thing. Sometimes I feel bad, but then I remember how boring he is. 5 years. I'd planned her the perfect surprise party. Now, she was about to get a very different kind of surprise. My hands didn't shake. My breathing stayed steady. I felt this weird calm settle over me, like ice forming on a lake. I scrolled up. Messages going back months. Hotel confirmations. Inside jokes. Photos I definitely wasn't supposed to see. Times and dates that matched up perfectly with her late nights at the office and client dinners. I forwarded the entire thread to my personal email. Every message, every photo, every piece of evidence. Then I went into her cloud storage and downloaded everything there too. Text messages, emails, calendar entries showing blocked off time for K meetings. 5 years of lies, all backed up to the cloud like some kind of digital confession. The bathtub upstairs was still running. I could hear Daphne humming something. Happy, relaxed, completely unaware that her entire world was about to collapse. I didn't confront her that night. Didn't say a word. Just closed everything, left her phone exactly where I'd found it, and walked back to my office. I pulled out a folder from my bottom desk drawer. Inside was the post-nuptial agreement we'd signed 3 years ago when we refinanced the house. She'd barely glanced at it before signing. Just a formality, she'd said. Section 6, Clause B, Infidelity Clause. If either party commits adultery with proof of intent and action, the offending party forfeits all claims to joint assets. I'd insisted on it. She'd laughed it off. Like I'd ever cheat on you, Dan. You worry too much. I placed the folder on her dresser, right next to her jewelry box where she'd see it first thing in the morning. Then I packed a bag, grabbed my laptop, and left. By 2 in the morning, I was driving north on I-5 with no particular destination in mind. Just distance. Just silence. Just the road unfolding in front of me and the crystal clear knowledge that Daniel Grayson, the trusting husband, the good stepdad, the boring guy who didn't suspect a thing, was gone. What she didn't know was that boring guys can be very, very thorough when they need to be. The highway was empty at that hour. Just me, the dotted white lines, and the hum of the engine. I drove until I hit the Washington border, then pulled into a rest stop somewhere near Longview. The parking lot was deserted except for a couple of long-haul trucks with their running lights on. I sat there in the dark and made a list. Not an emotional list. A practical one. First, secure the evidence. Already done. Everything was backed up to 3 different cloud accounts Kyle and Daphne couldn't access. Second, Financial protection. I pulled out my phone and logged into our joint accounts. We had about $48,000 in savings, another $22,000 in checking. I transferred half to my personal account, the one I'd opened years ago for emergency funds. Then I locked down my direct deposit, rerouted it to that same account. Third, legal groundwork. I've been smart about the post-nup, but I needed more. At 3 a.m, I sent an email to Richard Kowalski, a divorce attorney I'd met at a college fundraiser last year. Subject line: need consultation ASAP. Infidelity evidence in hand. Fourth, disappear cleanly. I had vacation days stacked up. 63 days, to be exact. I never took time off. Always saved it. Always thought we'd use it for some big trip that never happened. I drafted an email to my boss explaining a family emergency required immediate leave. Vague enough to be believable, specific enough that no one would ask questions. I sent it at 6 a.m. when I knew he'd be checking messages before his morning run. By 7, I was parked outside of Wells Fargo in Olympia, waiting for them to open. When the manager arrived, I closed our joint credit cards, froze the home equity line, put alerts on everything with my name attached. If Daphne tried to drain accounts or run up debt, I'd know within minutes. The manager, a woman in her 50s named Patricia, gave me a sympathetic look when I explained I was protecting assets during a separation. Smart move, Patricia said. You'd be surprised how many people wait until it's too late. I wasn't going to be one of those people. Next stop, a storage unit facility off I-5. I rented a 10 by 10 under my name only. Paid cash for 6 months up front. Inside, I stashed everything I grabbed from the house. Important documents, backup hard drives, some personal items I didn't want disappearing. I also left a sealed envelope with copies of all the evidence. Insurance, in case Daphne tried something desperate. By noon, I was checking into an extended stay hotel in Tacoma under my own name. No hiding, no fake identities. I wasn't running from the law. I was running from a liar. I lay on the stiff hotel bed and stared at the ceiling. My phone had 17 missed calls from Daphne, 12 text messages, 3 voicemails. I didn't listen to any of them. Didn't read the texts. Just watched the notifications pile up like snow against a window. She was panicking. Good. Around 2 p.m., my phone buzzed with a call from Amber, Daphne's sister. I answered that one. Daniel, what the hell is going on? Amber's voice was sharp with worry. Daphne is losing her mind. She says you left in the middle of the night with no explanation. Ask your sister what she's been doing every Friday for the past 5 years, I said calmly. Then I hung up. I turned off my phone and slept for the first time in 36 hours. When I woke up, it was dark outside. I felt clear, focused, ready. This wasn't about revenge. This was about control. And for the first time in 5 years, I had it. 3 days after I left, someone knocked on my hotel room door at 7 a.m. I wasn't expecting anyone. Hadn't told anyone where I was staying except Richard, my attorney, and he wouldn't show up unannounced. I looked through the peephole and felt my chest tighten. Skylar. She stood there in her school hoodie and jeans, backpack slung over one shoulder, looking nervous and determined at the same time. 14 years old and already taller than her mother. I opened the door. Sky, what are you doing here? Does your mom know where you are? No, she said quietly. Can I come in? I stepped aside and let her in. She walked past me and sat on the edge of the bed, hands clasped between her knees. I'd never seen her look so serious. How did you find me? I asked, staying near the door. I track your phone, Skylar said. You showed me how to do it last year, remember? In case of emergencies. This felt like an emergency. Smart kid. Too smart, sometimes. You need to tell your mother where you are, I said. She's probably losing her mind right now. Skylar looked up at me, and I saw something in her eyes I hadn't expected. Anger. I don't care what Mom thinks right now, she said. I need to talk to you. About her. About what she's been doing. I went very still. What do you mean? Skylar pulled out her phone and started scrolling. Her hands were shaking slightly. I've known about Kyle for 6 months, she said. I saw them together. At first I thought maybe it was just work stuff, but then I saw them kissing in his car outside our house. Mom told him you were at some conference and wouldn't be back until late. 6 months. This kid had been carrying this secret for 6 months. Why didn't you tell me? I asked, keeping my voice gentle. Because I thought if I ignored it, it would go away, Skylar said, and her voice broke a little. I thought maybe it was just a phase or whatever. But it didn't stop. And then you left, And Mom is crying and calling everyone saying you abandoned us. And I can't let her do that. She held out her phone to me. On the screen was a photo she'd taken through a window. Daphne and Kyle in his Mercedes, clearly more than colleagues. The timestamp showed it was from 4 months ago. I have more, Skylar said. Photos, videos. I started documenting everything after the first time because I thought maybe I could use it to make her stop. To threaten to tell you if she didn't end it. Did you? I asked. Threaten her. Skylar shook her head. I was too scared. But I want to help you now. Whatever you're planning, whatever you need. She shouldn't get away with this. I sat down next to her and put my arm around her shoulders. She leaned into me, and I felt her start to cry. You're not responsible for your mother's choices, I said quietly. And you shouldn't have had to deal with this alone. Are you leaving us? Skylar asked, her voice muffled against my shoulder. Leaving me? I'm leaving your mother, I said. I'm not leaving you. Never. She pulled back and looked at me. Promise. Promise. Skylar wiped her eyes and took a shaky breath. Then let me help. Please. I want her to know that I know. That I'm on your side. I thought about it for a long moment. This was a lot for a 14-year-old to handle. But she'd already been handling it for months, alone, carrying the weight of her mother's betrayal without anyone to help her. Okay, I said, but we do this carefully. And you don't put yourself in the middle of anything dangerous or ugly. Deal, Skylar said. She sent me all the files right there. Photos, videos, even screenshots of texts she'd seen on her mother's phone when Daphne left it lying around. The evidence was damning. More than I'd had before. Thank you, I said. This took courage. She hurt you, Skylar said simply. And she lied to both of us. That's not okay. No, it wasn't. By the end of the week, Daphne had figured out I wasn't coming back anytime soon. The panic calls turned into angry voicemails. Then threatening ones. Then, finally, desperate. I didn't respond to any of them. What I did do was meet with Richard Kowalski at his downtown office. He was a bulldog of a man, mid-50s, with a reputation for winning ugly divorces. His office walls were covered with framed degrees and photos of him, shaking hands with judges. You've got her dead to rights, Richard said, reviewing the evidence I brought. The post-nup is solid. The proof is overwhelming. She won't get a dime. What about Skylar? I asked. I want to make sure she's protected. Richard leaned back in his chair. Skylar's 14. In Oregon, a judge will take her preference into account for custody decisions. If she wants to live with you, and you can demonstrate a stable environment, you'll likely get primary custody. Daphne will fight it. Let her fight, Richard said. You have documented evidence that her mother has been conducting an affair for 5 years, that she's been lying, manipulating, exposing her daughter to inappropriate situations. Any judge worth their salt will see you as the stable parent. I nodded slowly. I want a restraining order too, just in case. Smart. We'll file everything next week. Divorce petition, custody motion, asset freeze, the works. I left his office feeling something I hadn't felt in days. Control. That afternoon, I got a call from an unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Daniel, it's Amber. Daphne's sister. We'd always gotten along well. She was older than Daphne by 3 years, more grounded, less interested in appearances. Amber, I said carefully. What can I do for you? I need to talk to you, Amber said. In person. Please. Just give me 30 minutes. We met at a coffee shop in Beaverton, neutral territory. Amber was already there when I arrived, sitting at a corner table with 2 cups of coffee in front of her. She stood when she saw me and gave me a hug that surprised me. I'm so sorry, she said quietly. We sat down. Amber looked tired, older than her 41 years. Daphne told me everything, Amber said. Not willingly. I forced it out of her after you called me. About Kyle, about the affair, about how long it's been going on. And I asked. And I'm disgusted, Amber said flatly. I told her she's an idiot, and she deserves everything that's coming to her. I blinked. That wasn't what I'd expected. I love my sister, Amber continued. But I won't defend what she did. You've been nothing but good to her and to Skylar. You didn't deserve this. Does she know you're meeting with me? I asked. No, and I don't care. Amber took a sip of her coffee. I'm here to tell you that if you need someone to testify about her character, about the kind of mother she's been, I'll do it. You testify against your own sister? I'd testify for the truth, Amber said. And for Skylar. That girl deserves better than watching her mother destroy a good man. I studied Amber's face. She meant it. Thank you, I said. That means more than you know. There's something else, Amber said. Mom knows too. Julia. She's furious. She wants to talk to you, but she's afraid you won't take her call. Julia had always been kind to me. Traditional, a bit old-fashioned, but fair. I'll talk to her, I said. Amber smiled sadly. You're handling this with more grace than most men would. I'm not interested in being bitter, I said. I'm interested in being free. The divorce papers hit Daphne like a freight train. Richard filed everything on a Tuesday morning. By noon, a process server had delivered the documents to her at work. She called me 17 times in the next 2 hours. I didn't answer once. What I did do was send her a single text message. Everything you need to know is in the legal filing. Your attorney can explain it to you. Then I blocked her number. That evening, I got a call from Julia. I promised Amber I'd talk to her mother, so I picked up. Daniel, Julia said, her voice heavy. I just spoke with Daphne. She's hysterical. Says you're taking everything, that you won't even talk to her. Did she tell you why? I asked. There was a pause. She said there was a misunderstanding about a work colleague. I almost laughed. A misunderstanding. 5 years of hotel rooms and lies. And she was calling it a misunderstanding. Julia, I'm going to send you something, I said. And after you see it, if you still think I'm being unreasonable, we can talk. I forwarded her a selection of the evidence. Not the explicit photos, just the text messages. The hotel confirmations. The calendar entries showing K meetings scheduled during times Daphne had told me she was visiting Julia or running errands. 10 minutes later, Julia called back. When she spoke, her voice was thick with tears. I'm so sorry, she said. I had no idea. 5 years. 5 years, I confirmed. And Skylar knows? Skylar figured it out on her own 6 months ago. She's been carrying that weight by herself because she was scared to tell anyone. Julia made a sound like someone had punched her in the stomach. That poor child. And you've been so patient with all of us. With Daphne's drama. With her career changes. With everything. I tried, I said quietly. But I can't do it anymore. I understand, Julia said. And I want you to know, whatever happens in this divorce, I'm not taking her side. What she did is unforgivable. You have my support. And if you need me to speak on your behalf regarding Skylar, I will. 2 family members willing to testify against Daphne. Richard had been right. This was going to be a bloodbath. The following week, I got word through Richard that Daphne had hired Sharon Kellerman, one of the most aggressive divorce attorneys in Portland. Sharon had a reputation for scorched earth tactics. She didn't win by being fair. She won by being brutal. Let her bring her best, Richard said when we met to discuss strategy. We have the evidence, we have the post-nup, and we have witnesses. Kellerman can't spin her way out of a 5-year affair with documentation. What about Skylar? I asked. Will she have to testify? Possibly. Depends on how hard Daphne fights the custody arrangement. But Sky's old enough that the judge will interview her in chambers privately. She won't have to face her mother directly. That was something, at least. 2 days later, Sharon Kellerman sent over a counteroffer. Daphne was willing to admit to brief indiscretion in exchange for 50% of all assets and primary custody of Skylar with me, getting supervised visitation every other weekend. I read it twice to make sure I wasn't hallucinating. She thinks I'm going to accept this. I asked Richard over the phone. She's testing the waters, Richard said, seeing if you'll fold to avoid a public trial. It's standard intimidation. Tell her to go to hell, I said, politely. Richard chuckled. I'll phrase it more professionally, but the sentiment will be clear. That evening, Skylar video called me from Amber's house. Daphne had been getting increasingly unstable, and Amber had offered to let Sky stay with her until things settled down. Mom hired some shark lawyers, Skylar said. She keeps telling me I'll have to choose between you guys in court, that the judge will make me pick. That's not how it works, I assured her. You'll talk to the judge privately. No one will force you to choose in some dramatic courtroom scene. Your mom is trying to scare you. Well, it's working a little, Skylar admitted. But I'm not changing my mind. I want to live with you. We'll make it happen, I promised. Just hang in there a little longer. After we hung up, I sat in my hotel room and thought about how Daphne must be feeling right now. Her perfect image shattered. Her family turning against her. Her daughter choosing me over her. Part of me almost felt sorry for her. Almost. But then I remembered 5 years of lies. 5 years of coming home to someone who looked me in the eye and lied about where she'd been, who she'd been with, what she'd been doing. The sympathy evaporated. She'd made her choices. Now she could live with the consequences. 3 weeks into the divorce proceedings, I did something Daphne never saw coming. I threw the birthday party. Not for her. For Skylar. Daphne's birthday had come and gone 2 weeks earlier without celebration. She'd spent it holed up in the house, probably crying and calling lawyers. But I'd already paid deposits for the venue, the caterer, the string quartet. The party planner had been sympathetic when I explained the situation and offered to reschedule everything. We could do a celebration for your stepdaughter instead, she'd suggested. Same vendors, different guest of honor. Skylar's 15th birthday was coming up in November. Perfect timing. I sent out invitations to everyone who mattered. Skylar's friends from school, Amber and Julia, a few of my colleagues from the college who'd gotten to know Sky over the years, even some of Daphne's old friends who'd quietly reached out to express their support for me. Daphne wasn't invited. The party was held at the same riverside venue I'd booked for Daphne. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the Willamette River. Elegant without being pretentious. The string quartet played while people mingled. The catering was perfect, upscale finger foods, and a chocolate fountain that the teenagers swarmed. Skylar wore a blue dress that Julia had bought for her. She looked older than 15, poised and confident, surrounded by people who genuinely cared about her. I'd even kept the slideshow, but instead of photos of Daphne, I'd filled it with pictures of Skylar. Her first day of school, when I'd met her at age 6. Halloween costumes over the years. Science fair projects. The trip we'd taken to the coast where she'd found a sand dollar and insisted on bringing it home. Birthday after birthday, with me in most of the photos, grinning like an idiot because I'd been so proud of this kid who wasn't even mine by blood. When a slideshow played, Skylar started crying. Happy tears this time. You kept all of these? She asked me, wiping her eyes. Of course I did, I said. You're my daughter. That doesn't change just because your mother and I are getting divorced. Amber came over and hugged both of us. This is what family looks like, she said quietly. Not the mess Daphne created. This. Julia gave a short speech about how proud she was of Skylar for handling everything with such maturity. She didn't mention Daphne by name, but everyone knew what she meant. Later, one of Skylar's friends pulled me aside. A girl named Emma who'd been Sky's best friend since 6th grade. Mr. Grayson, I just wanted to say thank you, Emma said. Sky told me everything that's been going on. My parents are divorced too, and my dad just kind of disappeared. But you're still here. That means everything. I didn't trust myself to speak, so I just nodded. The party was winding down when my phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. I almost ignored it, but curiosity got the better of me. It was Daphne. She'd gotten a new number after I blocked her old one. The message was short. I saw the photos on Amber's Facebook. You threw my party for Skylar. I typed back. I threw a party for someone who deserves to be celebrated. Happy birthday, Sky. 3 dots appeared, indicating she was typing. Then they disappeared. Then appeared again. Finally, a message came through. You're the worst. I smiled and deleted the message. The worst for keeping my promises. A bastard who showed up for the people who mattered. A bastard who knew the difference between loyalty and doormat. I could live with that. The party ended just after 9. Skylar hugged me tight before leaving with Amber. This was the best birthday ever, she said. Thank you for not giving up on me. Never, I promised. Not in a million years. As I watched them drive away, I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Peace. Not happiness exactly, but a quiet certainty that I was on the right path. Daphne had thrown away everything for 5 years of hotel rooms with Kyle. And in doing so, she'd lost the 2 people who'd loved her most. Her daughter, and the man who would have moved mountains for her if she'd just been honest. Now all she had was regret and a lawyer who charged $400 an hour. 6 weeks into the divorce, I got an unexpected email. It was from a woman named Rachel Torres who hosted a podcast called Second Chances that focused on life transitions and personal growth. She'd heard about my situation through a mutual acquaintance at the college. I'd love to talk to you about navigating divorce with dignity, her email read. Not as a revenge story, but as a conversation about choosing your own path when life falls apart. No names, completely anonymous if you prefer. I thought about it for 2 days before responding. Part of me wanted to stay invisible, handle everything privately. But another part The part that had been silent for 5 years while Daphne built her lies, wanted to speak. I agreed to the interview under one condition: no real names, no identifying details. Just a story about choosing self-respect over bitterness. We recorded it in Rachel's home studio in Northeast Portland. She was in her 40s, warm and professional, with the kind of voice that made you want to tell the truth. "So you discovered your wife had been unfaithful for 5 years," Rachel said, about 15 minutes into the conversation. "What was your first reaction?" "Calm," I said, which surprised me. I thought I'd be angry or devastated, but what I felt was clarity, like someone had turned on a light in a room I'd been stumbling around in for years. "And you left that night?" "I did, because I knew if I stayed, if I gave her the chance to explain or apologize, I might fall back into the pattern. I might convince myself it wasn't that bad, that we could work through it. But 5 years isn't a mistake. It's a choice, and I needed to make my own choice." Rachel leaned forward. "You planned a surprise birthday party for her. What happened to that?" I smiled. "I threw it for her daughter instead. My stepdaughter. She'd been caught in the middle of everything, and I wanted her to know that some people keep their promises." "That's remarkable," Rachel said quietly. "Most people in your situation would have canceled everything, walked away completely." "I did walk away from my wife," I said, "but I didn't walk away from being the kind of man I want to be. There's a difference." The interview lasted 90 minutes. We talked about recognizing your worth, about the difference between forgiveness and doormat behavior, about rebuilding life on your own terms. Rachel's final question caught me off guard. "What would you say to your wife if she was listening right now?" she asked. I was quiet for a long moment. "I'd say that I hope she finds whatever she was looking for in those hotel rooms. Because what she lost was a man who would have moved mountains for her if she'd just been honest. That's not something you find twice." The podcast went live 2 weeks later. Rachel titled it "The Quiet Exit: When Walking Away is the Bravest Thing You Can Do." Within 3 days, it had 50,000 downloads. By the end of the week, it hit 200,000. People were sharing clips on social media, quoting the line about not burning the house down, just stopping payment on the mortgage. I started getting messages. Men who'd been through similar situations, thanking me for putting words to what they'd felt. Women who said it helped them understand why their partners had left. Even a few therapists asking permission to share it with clients. The attention was overwhelming and uncomfortable, but it also felt like breathing after holding your breath for too long. 3 days after the podcast hit viral status, I got a text from Amber. "Daphne heard it. She knows it's you. She's not handling it well." I didn't respond. What was there to say? That evening, Skylar called me. She was laughing. "Everyone at school is talking about this podcast," she said. "They don't know it's about Mom, but I do. And Daniel, it's perfect. You told our story without being mean, without being bitter. You just told the truth. How are you doing with all of this?" I asked. "Better than Mom," Skylar said. She called Aunt Amber crying, saying you humiliated her publicly. But Amber told her that you never used her name, never said anything cruel. You just told your side. And if she feels humiliated, maybe that's because she knows what she did was wrong. Smart kid. Too smart sometimes. "I'm proud of you," I said, "for handling all of this with grace." "I learned from the best," Skylar replied. After we hung up, I sat on the deck of my hotel room and watched the sunset over Portland. The city lights were starting to flicker on, one by one, like stars falling upward. I thought about Daphne listening to that podcast, hearing her story told from my perspective for the first time, realizing that I wasn't the boring, clueless husband she'd painted me as, that I'd been paying attention all along. I hoped to hurt, not because I wanted revenge, but because pain is how we learn. And Daphne had a lot to learn. 8 weeks after filing for divorce, I made a decision. I needed a permanent place. Somewhere that wasn't a hotel room, wasn't temporary, wasn't waiting for my old life to magically fix itself. I found it on a Saturday afternoon while driving through the Cascade foothills east of Portland. A for sale sign at the end of a gravel road that wound up through Douglas fir and cedar. The property was 15 acres with a small cabin, a workshop, and a view that stretched all the way to Mount Hood on clear days. The cabin was rough. 60 years old, needed work but solid bones. Wood stove, well water, solar panels that barely functioned. The kind of place you could disappear into and come out different on the other side. The realtor was a guy named Frank, probably in his 70s, who'd lived in the area his whole life. Previous owner was a woodworker, Frank said, showing me the workshop behind the cabin. Built custom furniture. Died last year. Kids don't want the property. They're motivated sellers. I walked through the workshop. Tools hung on pegboards, organized and cared for. A workbench that had seen decades of use. Sawdust still on the floor, like the owner had just stepped out for lunch. I'll take it, I said. Frank blinked. Don't you want to see the rest? Check the foundation. Get an inspection. I'll get an inspection for the paperwork, I said. But I'm buying it. Cash offer. Close in 2 weeks. The look on Frank's face was worth it. I used money from my personal account, the one Daphne had never had access to. The same account I'd been quietly building for years, putting away bonuses and extra income. Insurance for a rainy day. Turned out it was pouring. 2 weeks later, I had the keys. I drove up with Skylar on a Sunday morning. She'd been staying with Amber during the week and spending weekends with me. The custody hearing was still a month away, but Daphne had stopped fighting it. Her lawyer had advised her that fighting for custody while unemployed and under investigation for expense fraud wasn't a winning strategy. Khaled fired her. Quietly, without drama, but firmly. He couldn't be seen keeping his mistress on staff while going through his own messy divorce. So Daphne was job hunting while trying to avoid criminal charges and fighting a divorce she couldn't win. Meanwhile, I had a cabin in the woods. This is amazing, Skylar said, walking through the main room. It's like a fairy tale cottage. The good kind, not the creepy witch kind. I laughed. It needs work. A lot of work. Can I help? She asked. Like, actually help? Learn how to fix things. Absolutely, I said. In fact, I'm going to teach you woodworking. The previous owner left all his tools. Seems wrong to let them go to waste. We spent that first day cleaning, organizing, making lists of repairs. Skylar attacked it with the enthusiasm of someone who'd been cooped up in dysfunction for too long and finally had permission to build something real. That evening, we sat on the porch and watched the sunset paint Mount Hood in shades of pink and gold. Skylar leaned against my shoulder. I like this version of life better, she said quietly. It's simpler. Honest. Me too, I admitted. Do you think Mom will ever understand what she lost? Skylar asked. I thought about it. Maybe. Someday. When she stops being angry and starts being honest with herself. And if she doesn't, then that's her choice to live with, I said. Not ours. The next week, I started teaching Saturday woodworking classes. Posted a flyer at the local community center. Nothing fancy. Just basic woodworking for beginners. Saturdays 10 to 2. Learn to build something that lasts. 6 people showed up the first week. By week 3, I had a waiting list. Most of them were men going through their own versions of what I'd experienced. Divorces, job losses, life transitions. They came to learn how to use a saw and a plane, but what they really needed was a place where they didn't have to pretend everything was fine. We built simple things at first. Cutting boards, small shelves, picture frames. But it wasn't really about the projects. It was about the process. Taking raw materials and shaping them into something useful. Sanding away the rough edges. Creating order from chaos. One of the guys, a veteran named Tom going through a brutal divorce, said it best. This is cheaper than therapy and more useful than a bar. I couldn't argue with that. 4 months after the divorce was finalized, Daphne showed up at my cabin. I didn't know how she'd found the address. Maybe Amber told her. Maybe she hired someone to track me down. Either way, there she was on a Saturday afternoon, standing at the bottom of my driveway looking uncertain and small. I was in a workshop with 3 students, teaching them how to use a hand plane. Tom, the veteran, spotted her first. Daniel, you've got company, he said quietly. I looked up and saw her through the open door. My first instinct was to tell her to leave, but something in her posture stopped me. She wasn't here to fight. She was here to surrender. I excused myself and walked out to meet her. We stood there in the gravel, 10 feet apart, like strangers meeting for the first time. How did you find me? I asked, keeping my voice neutral. Your attorney gave Skylar the address, Daphne said. For emergencies. She didn't tell me, but I saw it written down. This is an emergency. I asked. For me it is, she said quietly. Can we talk? Just for a few minutes. I considered sending her away, but curiosity won out. I gestured toward a bench near the tree line, away from the workshop where my students could still see us, but not hear us. We sat down, maintaining careful distance between us. "I'll listen to your podcast," Daphne said. "About 15 times, actually. And every time, I kept waiting for you to say something cruel, something vindictive. But you never did. What would be the point?" I asked. "Most men would have destroyed me publicly," she said. "Used my name, share the photos, made me into a villain. But you told your story without making me into a monster." "You're not a monster," I said. "You're just someone who made terrible choices." Daphne flinched. "I lost everything, Daniel. My job, my reputation, my family. Julia barely speaks to me. Amber is polite but distant. Skylar lives with you full-time and sees me every other weekend like I'm some kind of babysitter." "You did that to yourself," I said calmly. "I know," she whispered. "I know I did. And I wanted to come here and tell you that I understand now. What I threw away. Who you were. What we could have been if I hadn't been so stupid and selfish." I waited. There had to be more. "I'm in therapy," Daphne continued. "Real therapy, not just the court-ordered stuff. My therapist thinks I have some kind of validation addiction. That I need constant attention and affirmation from new people because I don't believe I'm worth anything on my own." "That's probably accurate," I said. She looked at me with surprise. "You knew." "I suspected," I said. "The way you needed everyone to like you, to admire you. The way you curated your life for Instagram instead of living it. But I thought if I loved you enough, you'd feel secure." "I was wrong." "You weren't wrong," Daphne said. "I was just too broken to see what you were offering." We sat in silence for a moment. Birds called from the trees. In the workshop, I could hear Tom laughing at something one of the other students said. "Why are you really here?" I asked. Daphne took a shaky breath. "I wanted to ask if there's any chance, any possibility, that someday you might forgive me. Not take me back. I know that's over. But just forgive me so I can stop hating myself." I looked at her. Really looked at her. She'd lost weight. Her hair was shorter, less styled. She wore jeans and a plain sweater instead of her usual designer clothes. She looked more real than I'd ever seen her. "I forgave you months ago," I said quietly. "Not because you deserved it, but because carrying anger was exhausting. But forgiveness doesn't mean reconciliation. It just means I'm not letting what you did poison the rest of my life." Tears streamed down her face. "Thank you. That's more than I deserve." "Probably," I agreed. "But Daphne, you need to do something for me." "Anything," she said. "Stop punishing yourself and start building a real life. Get the therapy you need. Be honest with people. And most importantly, be a real mother to Skylar. Not the Instagram version. The actual, show up and do hard things version." "I'm trying," Daphne said. "It's harder than I thought." "Most real things are," I said. She stood up, wiping her eyes. "I should go. I just needed to say this face to face." As she walked toward her car, I called out, "Daphne." She turned back. "I hope you find what you're looking for," I said. "Just make sure it's real this time." She nodded and drove away. Tom came out of the workshop a few minutes later. "Ex-wife?" he asked. "Yeah," I said. "How'd it go?" "Better than expected," I admitted. "Turns out sometimes people do learn from their mistakes." "You think she'll actually change?" Tom asked. I shrugged. "Maybe. Maybe not. But that's not my problem anymore." We went back into the workshop and spent the rest of the afternoon teaching people how to turn rough wood into something beautiful. 9 months after the divorce, my life looked nothing like it had before. The cabin was fully renovated. Skylar had her own room with a view of the mountains. The workshop had become a gathering place for men rebuilding their lives, one project at a time. I'd started a YouTube channel documenting the builds. Nothing fancy, just me talking through techniques while working on furniture. It had grown to 30,000 subscribers. People said they found it calming, meditative. A few even said it had saved them during dark times. The college had offered me my old job back, but I declined. I was making enough from the classes, some commission furniture work, and ad revenue from the channel. More importantly, I was happy. Actually happy, not just comfortable. Skylar was thriving. Straight A's, made the honor roll, joined the robotics team. She spent weekdays with me and occasional weekends with Daphne when Daphne could get her act together. The relationship between them was healing slowly. Skylar had set boundaries, and surprisingly, Daphne was respecting them. Julia visited twice a month, bringing groceries and stories about her book club. Amber came up with her kids for camping trips. Even Tom from the workshop had become a regular fixture, helping with bigger projects, and offering the kind of quiet friendship that doesn't require constant maintenance. On a Sunday morning in early fall, I was sitting on the porch with coffee when a car I didn't recognize pulled up. A woman got out, mid-30s, with kind eyes and an easy smile. "Daniel Grayson?" she asked, walking up the path. "That's me," I said, standing. "I'm Melissa Porter," she said, extending her hand. I shook it. "I'm sorry to show up unannounced. I heard about your woodworking classes from the community center. I was hoping there might be room for one more student." "Classes are pretty full," I said, "but I can put you on the waiting list." "Actually," Melissa said, "I was hoping for something more specific. I'm starting a nonprofit that teaches job skills to people re-entering the workforce after incarceration. I want to include woodworking as one of the options. I was wondering if you'd consider consulting on the program." I stared at her. "You want me to teach ex-convicts woodworking?" "I want you to teach people who made mistakes how to build something meaningful," she corrected gently. "Same thing you're doing here, just with a different population." I thought about it. About Tom, who'd been lost before he found a hand plane and a purpose. About all the men who came through my workshop looking for something they couldn't name, but found in the simple act of creation. "Let me think about it," I said. "But I'm interested." Melissa smiled. "That's all I'm asking. Here's my card. No pressure, just possibility." After she left, I sat back down with my coffee and looked out of the mountains. 10 months ago, I'd been a man whose wife had been lying to him for 5 years. A man planning a birthday party for someone who'd already checked out of their marriage. Now I was a man who taught people how to build things that lasted. Who'd created a space where broken people could come and slowly piece themselves back together. Who'd learned that sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. It's building a life so good, so real, so authentic that the person who betrayed you becomes irrelevant. Skylar came out onto the porch, still in her pajamas, carrying her own cup of coffee. At 15, she'd started drinking it black, claiming it was more adult. "Morning," she said, sitting down next to me. "Morning, kiddo. Was that someone looking for classes?" she asked. "Something like that," I said. "A woman who wants to start a program teaching woodworking to people getting out of prison." Skylar's eyes lit up. "That's amazing. Are you going to do it?" "I'm thinking about it." "You should," she said firmly. "You're good at this, at helping people find their way back." I put my arm around her shoulders. "When did you get so wise?" "I learned from the best," she said, echoing words she'd said to me months ago. We sat there in comfortable silence, watching the morning sun paint the mountains gold. Somewhere in Portland, Daphne was probably sleeping in, scrolling through her phone, trying to figure out how to rebuild a life she'd shattered. Somewhere out there, Kyle was dealing with his own consequences. But here, on this porch, in this moment, with this kid who'd chosen me even when she didn't have to, I had everything that mattered. The divorce had taken a lot. My marriage, my trust, a version of myself that believed love was enough. But it had also given me something. Clarity, purpose, the knowledge that I could survive betrayal and come out stronger on the other side. And it had given me this: a quiet morning on a mountain, a daughter who trusted me, and the deep satisfaction of building something real with my own 2 hands. That was worth more than any birthday party could ever be.